Suppression of free speech is a mechanism of slavery. When a free voice stops being argued with and starts being diagnosed, it's an unmistakable tell. The facts are no longer confronted. The reasoning is no longer challenged, and the debate gives way to insinuation. Something must be wrong with her. He is unstable. She needs help. The old trick, reheated. Psychiatry as a political weapon. We are not witnessing a medical opinion. We are witnessing the ancient political reflex of capture. This is not disagreement. It is an attempted character liquidation. Historically, psychiatry has been the velvet glove over the iron fist of power. When states encounter voices that will not bend, psychiatry is mobilized to do what censorship alone cannot, to delegitimize the speaker rather than the speech. The asylum replaces the courtroom. The white coat replaces the black robe. One could be locked away for not being wrong, but for being dangerously correct. This was not anomaly, it was method. Political nonconformity is reframed as psychological deviance. When truth threatens power, diagnosis is cheaper than rebuttal. Concern for well-being now does the work once done by iron bars. One may dismiss the ideas by discrediting the mind that holds them. This is the language of institutions, not of honorable debate. Capture is revealed by conduct. Capture rarely announces itself. To accuse an opponent of mental illness is to concede that the reason has failed. It is not courageous. It is mentally lazy. Criminality can be reframed as illness, dissent as imbalance, conviction as pathology. The dissenter is no longer wrong. He is unwell. This maneuver is seductive precisely because it bypasses debate. One cannot argue with diagnosis. One can only submit to it. Candace Owens represents something profoundly irritating to the managerial class, a coherent, articulate voice that refuses to be managed, bought off, or extorted. She speaks plainly. She does not ask permission. She does not accept the approved vocabulary. Such people have always attracted psychiatric suspicion from those who cannot defeat them intellectually. Capture does not always involve money. Sometimes it involves the erosion of standards, the abandonment of good conduct, and the quiet decision that expedience matters more than principle. There is a line in civilized discourse. One side is disagreement. The other is dehumanization. Sanity is demonstrated, not proclaimed, and never weaponized. The suggestion that Candace Owens suffers from mental health issues tells us nothing about her, but much about those who suggested it. Rape born, orphan adopted, blessed bastard, indigenous initiated, martial arts mastered, PSYOPs and special forces served, decades of duty in DEA and DIA, intelligence inducted, sabotage and slandered, corruption crucibled, deep state betrayed, Yeshua saved, whistleblower warrior, rejecting revenge, repurposed in redemption, as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller. Now America's intelligence officer, following God, leading my family, and any that choose to join on our long walk to faith and freedom. Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Hey, welcome everybody. Hope you all had a wonderful, sacred, blessed Christmas. We did. It was a nice, quiet Christmas. We didn't do too much. We went to a Christmas Eve Mass because there was no Christmas Eve church going on. Wasn't that great, but I wanted to do something like that. And we had a quiet dinner together. And I thought we were going to do less presents this year because of the expenses of the house and everything, but we actually did more presents for everybody. My wife got me my wonderful new Omega Seamaster because the other one was phony. So we had a really good time, but I think because of it was such a traumatic year, you know, the house fire, my daughter breaking her foot, my dad dying, it was good, very good for us. So I hope you had a wonderful, blessed Christmas as well, and very, very restful one as well for us. So today's show is calling Candace crazy, de-legitimization by diagnosis. That's what the intro was, and that intro courtesy of John Mapin, a Candace supporter over in England, and also a Scientologist, by the way, who was nice enough to reach out to me. I was very impressed with his grasp of the language and his accuracy there. So crediting the original author of that. See, give me some of that there. Attack the messenger and the conditions the minds of the uninformed to reject the message based upon the identity of the messenger. And of course, this is what I'm referring to. Alex Jones all of a sudden coming out and saying Candace is crazy, and other people saying Candace needs to be committed. And I actually went through this too. So back, when in 04, when I went over, I was called, attacked the duty on 0304 by the Defense Intelligence Agency from my DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration job, and my informant, my high-level informant, was left hanging in the wind. So he decided to sue the head of the DEA, Michelle Leonard, then for the $5 million State Department reward. And I got called over to the DEA headquarters, which is just opposite the Pentagon. And because I was running the DIA's Global Watch Center, I had a cell in the Pentagon, so I was there a lot. I had a cell at Clarendon as well, but I went over there, and I went up and said, no, he can't have this $5 million. Here's the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. We're paying him, these $250,000 payments that I had to pay, but the State Department reward is totally separate. There's got no leg to stand on. But then I said, but Michelle Leonard destroyed my case against him because she had me paying him these $250,000 payments as opposed to $10,000 a month, as I extradited Miguel Caro Quintero, brother of Rafael, who murdered and tortured our agent Kiki Camarena. So she really destroyed the case. And I didn't think anything of it, but went back to work, came off of active duty in 04, and all of a sudden OPR, Officer of Professional Responsibility of DEA, was coming after me. Well, I know now that the confidential informant coordinator had run upstairs to Leonard's office as soon as I left and said, "Hey, he's blaming you for destroying this case." And then it took me a long time to figure out, but I did, because I was also the liaison to ATF, and Fast and Furious began an ATF group in DEA in Arizona, by the way, that the other side of the gun running was the drug running, and the DEA had a deal with the Sinaloa cartel to run drugs north in exchange for the Fast and Furious guns going south. And I learned that with John Dobson, Vince Cefalu, my ATF whistleblower friends on Fast and Furious, back in the day. And I kind of stumbled on this. But then when I did stumble on it, they thought that, I knew about it more than I did at the time. But that's why they started targeting me from 04 to 09. And so in 09, after 19 years on the job, never having a bad evaluation, never being charged, certainly never being convicted of anything, they fired me 1 year from retirement. But they slandered me, all over the place. I was labeled like a David Koresh cult leader, which is funny because, it was the ATF who started the shooting at Waco, and then the FBI who burned all the women and children alive. I was actually at the FBI Academy going through firearms school when that was happening and speaking out about that. But when I went through, as they were investigating me from 04 to 09, that they slandered me all the time. They slandered me, my ex-wife, slandered me to my minor children, which is illegal. By the way, they had this Jared Armitage character who cyberstalked me for over a decade with the black contacts, went on every site to badmouth me and say I was a sexual predator. They got a couple ex-employees to try and pretend I had raped them, which didn't work out. They went to the police laughed them out of there. They went to the sheriffs laughed them out of there because I had emails for a year and a half afterwards, working with these ladies. And of course, they had said nothing ever until they came after me. It's not like there was a history of this behavior. It was like all of a sudden, after 15 years on the job, all of a sudden I'm a bad guy. Where I went from hero to zero. But the point I want to make today is, I would get called in for this long investigation that OPR was running on me, which is really a hit job. It wasn't an investigation. It was get this guy. And one part of it was I got called to DEA headquarters to take psychiatric tests. And one of the psychiatric tests was in headquarters. So, I just sat there very calmly, didn't cross my legs, didn't, nervously, I know how to do, all that stuff, and just answered all the questions. And they're like, do you think you're God? Do you think you're Jesus Christ? I'm like, no. Do you hear voices? No. And so I passed all that. And then they sent me out to a contract off-site psychiatrist for evaluation as well. And of course, I don't know any of this at the time, but I found out I passed both of these with flying colors because of my faith, because this whole thing originally was supposedly about outside employment. My company, Warrior School, was doing pre-deployment courses for units deploying into Iraq. So I was actually helping to save, veterans. I've talked about this on before. I've even had a show on the anniversary of Warrior School. It was a great job. So I even had permission for outside employment. But that morphed into, I was a cult leader, and that morphed into I was a sexual predator. None of that worked out. Eventually, they falsified documents, and I've proven they falsified documents. But anyway, the point here is that they gave me these psychiatric tests, and so they were trying to label me as crazy. So if they could just label me as crazy, then they could just say, okay, we don't have to worry about all the other stuff. That's the same thing that you're seeing, Alex Jones do with Candace, is delegitimize her message by delegitimizing her, kill the messenger to kill the message. And I know it's true because later on, when I'm getting, I'm trying to appeal my firing, and I had an attorney, I get all their documentation. But by then I'm in New York. I'm not allowed to take any of it, photograph any of it. It's like 2 boxes of, it's 1.5 feet tall. I have to sit in the SAC's office and review it. So, it's totally unfair setup, but I get to see all the results. I see that I've passed the psychological examinations, not just once, but twice. And it's because of my spiritual beliefs, because again, they were coming after Christ Connectionism and Christ Connection chaplaincy. Well, the chaplaincy didn't start until 2009, but Christ Connectionism, where I'd had a near-death experience and God had spoken to me, had certainly long happened before that. So I was already formulating my spiritual beliefs at that time. And so they were, that's illegal. You can't do that. And I saw where the OPR guy, Rusty or Dusty McMillan, had been warned multiple times. Hey, stop coming after this guy's beliefs. That's against the law. But, he was doing that anyway, because there's nobody checking, OPR. OPR is the check itself. So anyway, I passed both of their psychiatric exams, and what they wrote was, well, psych eval him again. And what they're saying is, psych eval him until we get the result we want, which is, that he's crazy. Because of course, if you do it again, then you're just trying to set the stage for what's going on. So this stage of what's happening to Candace is very common. And then since then, and I've known other whistleblowers, a lot of agencies, institutions do this. That's why I said this is the language of institutions, not individuals. The NSA really likes to do this as well, because if you can be evaluated as psychologically unsound, then they can pull your clearance. They pulled my clearance anyway, top secret, which is very valuable anyway for getting special classified work. But that's what this is, and this is a delegitimization of Candace by calling her crazy that Alex Jones is doing, and even beyond that, it is a dehumanization of a person because they simply don't like what you are saying, because that is not going along with the standard. So that's really important. And I also wanted to show you, my experience in that arena as well. So do I recognize what's going on with Candace? Yes. And what that means is it's valid. She doesn't have all the pieces. She doesn't claim she has all the pieces, but just like me, when I said to the CI coordinator at DEA headquarters, hey, Michelle Leonard destroyed my case because I was extraditing the first Mexican cartel leader, the Sinaloa cartel leader, Miguel Caro Quintero, brother of Rafael, who tortured and murdered our agent Kiki Camarena. That was a sea change. That hit home. That was truthful, and that scared them. So clearly, Candace is hitting home, and she is scaring them. She didn't have all the pieces. She doesn't have all the pieces. I didn't have all the pieces back then. I didn't understand. I thought initially it was this. I thought somehow this rusty, dusty OPR guy, McMillan, had a hard-on for me and was just, a rogue investigator, where he was clearly violating my religious rights, and he was talking to my minor children, bad-mouthing me, slandering me, my minor children and my ex-wife. And when they moved me to New York, they called up my new supervisor and said, he started telling him, all the things I've done. And the supervisor goes, wait a minute, you're an OPR investigator. You're just supposed to be investigating. You're not supposed to be telling me what this guy did wrong. You're muddying, the waters. And when I showed up in New York, I just said, and they said, hey, heard you had some troubles. I said, I'm here to work. I'm here to do the job. I didn't, whine, didn't complain. And they gave me outstanding evaluations, and they loved me in New York, as my supervisors had in Tucson as well before that. But that's the point of Alex Jones and others now saying that Candace is crazy. It is the last refuge, because they cannot refute her rationally. They cannot match her intellectually. And that's really and it's very dangerous, very important to understand that as well. So that's the first thing to talk about. Also understand that the contract is broken at this point. The Republic is memory. Federal employees coordinate sedition on Zoom calls, flashing government IDs while discussing thresholds of noncompliance. They train with sabotage manuals designed to paralyze executive functions. They test systems with strategic sick-outs. They move markers to break the economic will of dissenters. This happens in plain sight and is time-stamped. The evidence exists. The recordings circulate, names and faces attached. Meanwhile, the Republican Congress holds both chambers, does nothing. No subpoenas, no hearings, no investigations. Same with Russiagate. The conservative influencers who should be screaming about a coordinated coup attempt instead chase smaller game, run interference, attack each other, send you down rabbit holes, and offer limited hangouts that lead nowhere. The silence is bipartisan. The silence is the tell. If your enemy acts and your ally does nothing, despite holding every level of power, you do not have two sides. You have one production company running two teams. The machine offers thesis and antithesis, then harvests the synthesis. The left generates the outrage, the right absorbs the energy and redirects it into safe channels. Movements arise organically, gain real traction, threaten actual change, then the pattern executes. And that's exactly what happened with the Tea Party. That's exactly what's happened with MAGA. Leadership is neutralized, operations redirected, brands hollowed out, and the machine keeps humming. Breitbart was once was one thing when Andrew lived, and we guarded Breitbart. Didn't die on our watch, by the way. Turning Point, and it's also worth knowing that he was assassinated as well. Turning Point had genuine momentum. Watch where the money steers it now. And of course, there's a big investigation. And it looks like there was a lot of money. Charlie was starting to look into that. A lot of money was gone and missing. The Tea Party burned bright until approved handlers arrived to smother the flames into a fundraising apparatus that threatened absolutely nothing. The stadium owner does not care which team wins. He cares that the people show up, buy tickets, and invest emotional energy in the outcome. The concessionaire does not care which beverage you choose. He cares you drink. The sugar merchant does not care which brand you prefer. Every option uses his ingredient. Capture runs all the way to the molecular level. You knew the left was captured. You learned that neocons are different masters than they claimed. You recognized rhinos as the controlled opposition wearing conservative masks. Perhaps you believed MAGA was different, and this time the movement would remain pure. But when you look closer, you see the loudest voices running the interference, offering revelations that never quite arrive, steering discourse into endless loops that change nothing. The grifters have credentials and talking points too. Every side is a cell in the same prison. The warden lets you pick the jersey. Subversion did not begin recently. It was running before the ink dried on the Declaration. And that is sad. I did realize that, though, talking to Team America S3. The Bank of the United States, the Alien Sedition Acts, criminalizing dissent within a decade of the First Amendment. The incremental centralization of power away from states and citizens. By the time most Americans date the beginning of the corruption, it was already 3 generations deep. Look at the structure itself. 435 representatives for more than 300 million citizens. 1 voice per 700,000 people. The founders envisioned 1 per 30,000. The ratio was frozen in 1929, locked by the Permanent Apportionment Act, ensuring the number would remain manageable. But manageable for whom? 100 senators, 535 total legislators controlling the direction of the largest economy in human history. You do not need to purchase a nation. You need to purchase 535 people or fewer. By the committee chairs, fewer still, by the leadership. A few dozen individuals properly leveraged through money or blackmail. It's actually both. Steer everything. Except for like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey. The bottleneck is artificial, engineered for efficient capture. The Federal Reserve arrived in 1913, transferring monetary sovereignty from the people to a private banking cartel. That same year, the 17th Amendment removed state legislators from Senate appointments, severing the balance between federal and state power. The intelligence apparatus emerged after World War II as a parallel government operating beyond electoral accountability. The administrative state metastasized in an unelected 4th branch, writing rules with force of law. And this is the sad truth. The contract is spectral. The dissolution already happened. We are living in the administrative after image of a republic that exists now in name only, which is why I say our republic is fallen. But there is a third way. The third way forward is not another team in the same rigged game. The exit does not lead to a better seat in the stadium. It leads out of the stadium entirely. Mute the noise, ignore the managed alternative, stop consuming the outrage they manufacture to keep you watching the Globetrotters dunk on the generals for another season. Follow the one who walked the occupied territory 2,000 years ago and told people they were already free. He spoke to crowds controlled by Rome and Pharisee alike, and he offered no political program, no revolutionary army, no alternative faction. He pointed inward. The kingdom is within. No priest or system stands between a person and God. The direct connection was always available to anyone willing to stop watching the show and turn around. Which is why I encourage you to join Christ Connection Chaplaincy at christchaplaincy.com. That is the most important work we do. Sorry about that. Don't see anybody on X today. But please, if you can, appreciate it if you would try and support the show at jeffreyprather.locals.com, $9 a month, $90 a year, or patreon.com/jeffreyprather, $5 curated news, $15 special articles, published 2 today, and $25 training videos daily, and you can train with me monthly as well. Bondi's Minnesota Somali dangle distracts from 0 deep state arrests. So Trump held a press conference with Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. And this came after days of mounting outrage from conservatives and independent journalists. Pam Bondi issued what many are calling a damage control statement in response to growing accusations that the DOJ allegedly sat on one of the largest fraud scandals in modern U.S. history, the billion-dollar Minnesota Somali fraud network that looted taxpayer-funded welfare, daycare, COVID, and Medicare programs. The statement came only after independent investigative reporter Nick Shirley exposed the staggering scope of the corruption, centered largely in Minnesota's Somali nonprofit ecosystem, and after conservatives erupted over the lack of apparent urgencies from federal authorities while hundreds of millions vanished. In her statement, Bondi acknowledged the work of independent journalists and attempted to assure Americans from the United States Department of Justice had been working quietly, investigating frauds for months. According to Bondi, 98 individuals have been charged, 85 are of Somali descent, and more than 60 have already been convicted. So that may or may not be true. There's no reason to trust Bondi, but she is again reactive, just like pathetic Patel and blathering Bongino. But really, it is also a dangle, a distraction from the fact that as we wrap up the second administration of Trump, there are no arrests coming. And so this is the intelligence information indicating Trump made a deep state deal, and it wasn't too big to rig. I had a show just entitled this, so I'm saying this again. This is the intel information indicating Trump made a deep state deal, and it wasn't that it was too big to rig. Republicans arrested under the Biden administration include Donald Trump, Walt Nauta, Carlos de Oliveira, Stephen Bannon, Navarro, Thomas Barack, Matthew Grimes, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, John Eastman, Kenneth Chesborough, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, Scott Graham Hall, Sean Gull, David Schaefer, Kathy Latham, Jeffrey Clark, Trevor Cootie, Robert Cheesley, Harrison Floyd, Stephen Lee, Ray Smith, Michael Roman, Misty Hampton, Kelly Ward, Tyler Bauer, Nancy Cottle, Jacob Hoffman, Anthony Kern, James Lehman, Robert Montgomery, Samuel Moorhead, Lorraine Pellegrino, Jeffrey Salston, Michael Ward, Boris Efsten, Christina Bobb, Evan Weisselberg, Michael McDonald, Jesse Law, Jim DeGraffield, Durain James Hindle, Sean Meehan, Eileen Rice, Kathy Burnden, William Coate, Amy Facello, Clifford Frost, Shelley Girot, John Haggard, Mary Ann Henry, Timothy King, Michelle Lundgren, Melvin Maddock, James Renner, Mylan Rodriguez, Rosie Rock, Marianne Sheridan, Ken Thompson, Kat Vanderwood, Steve Bannon, Tina Peters, George Papadopoulos, plus 1,265 January 6 defendants. Democrats arrested under the Trump administration, 0. That is why I say the intelligence information indicates Trump made a deep state deal, and it wasn't that the election was too big to rig. They rigged it the first time. So this is the sub-story of Biden's thousands versus Trump's 0 prosecutions, and why Bondi's now announcement about the 86 Somali arrests is a deep state dangle away from the truth. And that is the unfortunate truth as I see it. And even more unfortunate is that Trump is calling for a pardon for Netanyahu, saying he is a wartime hero president. This differs from Tucker. Usually I'm in agreement with Tucker and very impressed with Tucker, who is saying that, oh, you know, the Trump administration is moving away from Israel finally and breaking. They were supporting Qatar or Qatar. And that was really not true either. He made a very basic statement, gently scolding Israel about Qatar, but he's totally supporting Qatar. He's saying, yeah, we could do more attacks on Iran. Looks like Iran's rebuilding their nuclear facilities in a different place. Of course, that's what the DIA report said, that hitting this once would not be sufficient. So I don't see Tucker's, I think Tucker's wrong on this, if he is still saying this, that Trump is moving away from Israel. There's no sign of that at all. The deep state is captured by Israel. The intelligence community is owned by Israel as well. But beyond calling Candace crazy suddenly, Alex and others, but Alex Jones being the primary one who's kind of changed his mind. So he's either been extorted or bought off, or both. And I've been on InfoWars. I've had Alex talking about me. Alex Jones's latest rant on Candace is a masterclass in lies, half-truths, and desperate smears. Alex just dropped another unhinged attack on Candace, twisting her words, inventing claims she never made, ignored massive new bombshells that blow his debunk to pieces. He said, "You want war? Let's go. Let's go line by line." His first thing was, Candace continues to make claims about Egyptian planes, hit teams at Fort Huachuca, 12 colonels killing Kirk. Erica Kirk's there, head of security there. So Candace never claimed a hit team, or that Charlie was killed at Fort Huachuca. Mid-City saw civilians, possibly misidentified, September 9th, early morning. That's Brian Wolper with a meeting, not 12 colonels planning a murder. And she's never said that. I've listened to all that. And again, I'm very familiar with Fort Huachuca. It's the military intelligence school. I went to military intelligence basic there, advanced. I've been a military instructor there. I've been a civilian instructor there. I know it very well. It's certainly a lot of stuff going on. But she's just saying there was a meeting that was happening. This meeting could have been about the drones, the high-speed drones that John Michael Cullen, who, by the way, still remains completely disappeared. Remember, John Michael Cullen came out and said there were high-speed drones that had to be government at the Charlie Kirk killing. And also there was a DDoS attack that shut down all the phones. We've never heard anything more about that. And John Michael Cullen has been disappeared, likely by the intelligence community. But that doesn't mean no one is inferring that this was a bunch of colonels. Well, that's what the Paramount Tactical former SF guy, I think he is inferring. I wasn't watching him, but one of my Patreon supporters asked me to look into that. He says, well, colonels wouldn't be plotting that. Well, no, they're not going to be plotting that. But if they are given a tasking about drones, then they would say, hey, there's a national security issue here or whatever. We need to deploy some drones or something, or this is coming out of DIA, this is coming out of CIA, something like that. They don't know all the pieces of that. To say that 12 colonels would never stand there plotting the assassination of Charlie Kirk is obvious, but it's also very shallow thinking that that's the way it would be, because that's not how covert operations are done. Those things are not ever spoken about openly. They are referred to obliquely, and that is for deniability purposes later. If you've ever seen the old movie Clear and Present Danger, where they're going to launch the Special Forces team, into Colombia, the one bureaucrat is saying to the other, did the president authorize this? And the guy says, he can't authorize this. Of course he can't authorize this. He gets to authorize it without saying it. And that stuff was like, and I've explained that, to you before, like with Jack Strong, the Czechoslovakian, who's complaining about the Russians taking over the country. And his boss says, well, I I could post you to DC. He doesn't say, go get yourself recruited to the CIA, which he does later to save his country, Czechoslovakia, from the Russians. He just says, I could post you to DC. The rest is left unsaid. It's like, well, sure would like for somebody like that to disappear. Of course, can't ever authorize anything like that. That would be totally illegal. That's how covert operations are done. And so for Paramount Tactical to present, and I saw that part that way, is, you know, very shallow and unsubstantive and not understanding of how things like that actually work. But, you know, just because you're in special forces doesn't mean you've done covert operations. I've seen this, you know, a lot. They certainly do intelligence operations, but not necessarily covert operations. And, you know, I have a lot of credentials in that area. Not only was I dual credentialed in DEA and DIA, you know, but I was in the forerunner of one of the most low-profile Tier 1 special operations intelligence units that still exists. So anyway, the next one, Alex said, I spent a good deal of money getting actual flight data. It's all lies. The RCH 702 SAM flight Candace highlighted, booked by Undersecretary Bradley Hansel's office, is real. Landed at Fort Huachuca September 8th after Colorado Springs visit. Holds up 12 passengers. Alex ignores this and pretends it's Egyptian planes. Alex Mitch wanders into a secure skiff, armed guards, 12 colonels. Mitch never claimed he wandered into a skiff. So a skiff is a special compartmented information facility. I spent a lot of my life inside skiffs. You wander into a skiff. There's guards. You can't take phones in there. But again, Alex is lying here. Not only is he crying or crazy, but he's also lying directly. He never said skiff. He just said it was a meeting. He said he saw civilians in a lobby area and was detained near a meeting room. He didn't even get into the meeting room, if I recall correctly. And then he said he's got 5 women with restraining orders, kids going public, time in prison, beating up women. It's very misleading. These are old allegations, no convictions on serious charges. New audio dropped today from Mitch's son confirms the ex, Candace Graylick, was a manipulator. Son calls her mean, says she always controls Mitch. Mitch defends her on the call. Classic abuse dynamic. Gary Melton's expose guest, the son backfired. And this is on the Paramount Tactical show. And he was backpedaling on this. And of course, he's, you know, very, very critical of Candace as well. So Candace says, I thought this maybe Daily Wire guy was there. That's a lie. As well. Candace shared a viewer tip photo resemblance. Somebody said could be nothing. You know, Candace is doing what the FBI is not. She's running an investigation with what she has got. But Alex won't touch the real financial scandal at TPUSA, the facts of Mitch's story that exonerate him, or the proof of the coordinated smear campaign through the poly market, because it hits too close to the donor power players that he predicts, which is because he is so big. Candace is asking questions. Alex is getting paid to bury. The truth doesn't fear investigation. Lies scream, shut it down. So that is what's happening there. And there is a bombshell allegation that TPUS financial scandal explodes, receiving financial kickbacks, and that Charlie was looking into that as well. So the Paramount Tactical guy, Alex, everybody who is trying to delegitimize what Candace has said are themselves being delegitimized and debunked. But again, my latest Substack, I said I'm not keeping up with all of this constantly, because we already know plenty. So we know that the destruction of the crime site completely being renovated with the permission of the FBI right after the assassination was worse than Waco, where they bulldozed the evidence into the fire. It was worse than Butler, where they hosed off the roof after leaving the body all night. So right there, we know they are in on it because they are destroying the crime scene. And that's the government, the FBI. So is the government in on it? Yes, obviously. Why? Because they destroyed the crime scene. And they allowed the entire scene to be rebuilt within days. Nobody would do that who was legitimate. So we already know that the government's in on it. So I don't need to know about the Egyptian planes in detail. But it's great that Candace isn't covering it. But do I know that the government's in on it? Yes. Then if I take what John Michael Cohen was saying about the fast-moving drones, which would have to be government assets, that means it's the U.S. government, Israeli government, Egyptian government, French government, somebody with high-level government assets in there. So we know the governments are involved, and we know they are covering it up. So would a planning meeting at Fort Huachuca reference drone systems and overhead surveillance make sense? Yeah, certainly would. Makes perfect sense to me. Would it be an assassination hit meeting? No, that's not going to happen like that. You're not like that at all. And again, compartmentalization of covert operations is how that happens. Do you think that Crooks or Robinson are told the whole story? Or let's say, it's not even likely Crooks, on the roof, but I can't think of the guy's name. Maybe somebody can tell me real quick on Rumble who I'm thinking of. It's not Crooks on the roof, but do you think Crooks was told the whole scheme? And then we're going to shoot you. No. And that's the same way with everybody. Everybody gets a piece of that. That's very typical the way CIA, runs things. Give me some of that, says Roger Stone. Yes, that's right. Crime scene sanitized, bodily aids, you're creaming out. Of course they're in on it. It's obvious, totally obvious that they're in on it. And again, if Paramount Tactical is saying it's a 30-06, we've seen plenty of ballistics experts debunking the 30-06 completely. That type of rifle, that actual rifle, although the photo that they showed was not the actual rifle. I've talked about how there are some folding mechanisms, a law folding rifle. I have a lot of those mechanisms on a lot of my rifles to make them more compact, but still getting them down your pants is difficult. But very important to understand that, and the delegitimization and dehumanization effort by calling Candace crazy, or by calling Tucker a Nazi, or Candace a Nazi, is another tactic as well. Because when you want to kill somebody or wipe somebody out, you don't call them human beings, you call them monsters. Much as Israel is calling the Gazans subhumans, goyim. Of course, if you're not Jewish, you're goyim as well. But if you want to start killing people and treating people as subhumans, then you identify them first as subhumans, and you use racial epithets for that purpose. And so when you label Candace or me or Tucker or whoever as a Nazi, well, Nazis are so bad. What are we supposed to do with Nazis? Well, we kill them as World War II. Or racist. Racism is a new religion of the left. No one's allowed to be racist, except blacks, of course. This is all part of a ploy, a psychological conditioning, a nationwide MK Ultra, where there is no more argument about the subject. There's no more debate. You are simply labeled as crazy, or you're simply labeled as a racist, or you're simply labeled as anti-Semitic, or you're simply labeled as a Nazi. And of course, the anti-Semitic label doesn't apply at all. All the Israeli Jews are Ashkenazi Jews from Europe, and Semitic means anybody from the region, Arabs, Coptic Christians, Palestinians, the Gazans themselves are all Semitic peoples. Tyler James Robinson, thank you. Thank you. Give me some of that for that. I appreciate that. Yes, Tyler James. Do you think that the guys who set Tyler James Robinson up on the roof and told him to walk back and forth said, and then we're going to shoot you? No, they're like, hey, hey, we just want you to walk up on the roof. We're testing a plan here. We want to see how long it takes the forces to react to that. This is your red team in this kind of thing. He's like, oh, wow, cool. Yeah. All right. Love to do that. That's what he's told. Well, these colonels, at Huachuca are told something else. Hey, this is about drones or whatever. I don't know what they're told. But that's typical intelligence compartmentalization. Nobody has the whole picture, except for the very guys at the top. So for Paramount Tactical to be saying, these are violating the rules of war and colonels would never do this, is just very shallow thinking. Also, let's go back to the illegal biological warfare of COVID, where all kinds of colonels went along with all kinds of stuff. No problem going along with stuff at all. And soldiers dying from it as well. So, will colonels go along with stuff like that? Sure, they will if it's presented properly, just like it was with COVID. So again, I don't know much about him. It seems, very credentialed, I guess. But every ex-Spec Op guy and Special Forces and SEAL guy has a show now, on YouTube. And if they're really breaking so much truth, then how come they haven't been banned like I have been, banned? I'm back on YouTube. I guess I went on the other end, like, hey, you can't post because we're censoring you again. So something I said already is getting me in trouble. How come that's not happening to these guys? Because they're given a story that goes along with what they want. Yeah, Ropo, we are labeled as conspiracy theorists. Yes, very true. But according to a story out recently by Baxter Dimitri, Erica Kirk has revealed chilling details about a high-level meeting hosted by Bill Ackerman in the Hamptons just weeks before the assassination of Charlie Kirk. According to Erica, prominent donors, many with strong ties to Israel interests, openly discussed contingency plans for who would take over Turning Point USA if something happened to Charlie. The meeting was hosted by billionaire hedge fund manager Bill Ackerman. Tucker talks about him all the time. Local supportive Israel and a major player in the pro-Israel advocacy took place in the Hamptons. That's the big hangout for the rich and elite. Obamas are there. They were talking about succession, she said. They wanted assurances about what would happen if Charlie was no longer there. Charlie reportedly reassured them TPUSA was vision-led and not independent on one person. Specifically praised Erica, stating that she would do a great job running it. This revelation raised explosive questions. Why were these donors so focused on succession planning mere weeks before Charlie's death? And why did a pro-Israel billionaire donor host discussion at the time when Charlie had begun voicing skepticism about certain aspects of U.S.-Israel relations? And Ackerman has publicly denied any threats or coercion during the meeting, insisting it was cordial. However, the fact that donors were already gaming out scenarios for Charlie's absence has left many asking, was this foresight or foreknowledge? This is a story by Jonas Alexis, has degrees in mathematics and philosophy, and studies U.S. foreign policy, the history of Israeli-Palestine conflict, teaches mathematics and logic in South Korea. So it sounds like a pretty serious guy. But what I would add to that story is, why is Erica saying this now? And again, I think this looks like a dangle from Erica to take heat off of her and TPUSA and put it elsewhere. Again, don't look here, look over there. That, I think, is much more realistic and true as well. I also want to talk about Wounded Knee. I have Native heritage. If you haven't read my book, Initiation, Boys Are Born, Men Are Trained, My Journey with an Apache Medicine Man, you should really read it. It's a great true story. And the medicine man is Philip Casador, legendary medicine man who helped reestablish the Na'iyas, or the Apache sunrise ceremony for girls when they have their first moon, and honoring them. It's a real powerful ceremony, and I've sung in that ceremony, done it many times. And started training with Philip in 1978, when the Indian religion was finally made legal in the United States. So it would have been illegal up until then. And the sunrise ceremony is so neat because there's no other corollary that honors the little girl having her first moon, because she is called Islan de Lehe, which is a Inde Apache word for mother of life, white painted lady, and she has special power, and you can get a blessing from her. It's very moving, very powerful. It's very long, expensive, difficult ceremony. Very requires a lot of endurance of young girls to go through. I think, I have long thought that America has a trinity that makes them up. There is our Mosaic tradition, which is the Ten Commandments. Benjamin Franklin wanted the Great Seal of the United States to be Moses parting the Red Sea with a pillar of fire behind him. And then, of course, the centerpiece is Christic, because Yeshua is the Messiah, Jesus is the Christ, and we are a Christian nation. And that is the centerpiece. That is our connection to God through Christ, the Christ connection. But there's also the native piece. And if you look at the generalization of all the rules or commandments of the indigenous North American Indian peoples who had left the giant slave cultures and death cults of the Mexica, the Azteca, and Maya and Toltec sacrifice cultures. They have left all those already, and we're living very free. The commandments are, never harm the children, and everything is born of women. And I am also a Lakota Chanupa Wichasa, which is a pipe holder that I'm ordained to pray with the peace pipe, which is just using tobacco. And it's worth noting that December 29th, yesterday, marked the 135th anniversary of the massacre at Wounded Knee, which occurred during the wintry week between Christmas and New Year's in 1890. So it's a good reminder, again, that while a lot of people are celebrating, a lot of the indigenous people are mourning. 9 days before the massacre, that left hundreds of Sioux men, women, and children dead, an obscure weekly newspaper published an article following the death of Hunkpapa Lakota leader Sitting Bull, Tatanka Yatanka, and they had just had him killed, by the way. So we're talking about assassinations. Tashunke Witko, Crazy Horse, was killed by his own people. Same thing with Sitting Bull, Tatanka Yatanka, Buffalo Bull that wakes. Early on the morning of December 29th, 1890, at Wounded Knee Creek in South Dakota, the Sioux people had been captured the previous afternoon by the U.S. 7th Cavalry, and they were surrendering their weapons, and a shot rang out. In most accounts, they vary, was that there was a deaf Lakota who did not understand that he had to give up his rifle, and a shot was fired. And then as soon as that happened, and that's what always happens, is one gun goes off, and then all the guns go off. The cavalry opened fire on the unarmed Sioux elders, women, and children. And historians believe between 250 and 300 Lakota were killed that day. It was very cold. Snow fell heavily. Some ancestors that were killed were left on the frozen plain until a burial party arrived days later. This Frank Baum, who later on wrote The Wizard of Oz, wrote, "The pioneer has before declared that our safety depends upon the total extermination of the Indians. Having wronged them for centuries, we had better, in order to protect our civilization, follow it up by one more wrong and wipe these untamed and untamable creatures from the face of the earth. In this lies future safety for our settlers and the soldiers who are under incompetent commands. Otherwise, we may expect the future to be years full of trouble with the Redskins as those who have been in the past." 10 years later, Baum published a children's book entitled The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. My family doesn't watch The Wizard of Oz. I did not know that, but as usual, you know, like when I said to my kids, "Hey, you want to go to Disneyland?" "No, we don't go to Disneyland." Then I learned about Disneyland. So now I know about the Wonderful Wizard of Oz as well. Baum did not single-handedly cause the genocide of natives, but his words contributed to it and helped to normalize violence and extermination as an acceptable policy. That's exactly what's trying to go on now when Tucker and Candace and me are called Nazis or crazy as well. That is the normalization of it. And very unfortunately, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth doesn't appear to understand history. On September 25th, 2025, and I covered this, but it's worth saying again, Hegseth said that he would not rescind the 20 Medals of Honor awarded to the U.S. 7th Cavalry for their actions at the 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre. He wasn't preserving history, he was protecting a lie. The lie that what happened at Wounded Knee was a battle deserving the nation's highest military recognition has been told for over 130 years. But natives know the truth. It wasn't a battle, it was a massacre of women, children, and elders. It remains one of the most painful, unresolved wounds in history. And try and emphasize, I know this seems to be so hard for everybody. I'm not sure why. I guess because of my native heritage, less hard for me. But, you know, everybody thinks about the Holocaust all the time. We just watched the Nuremberg movie, which was good. It was very well acted. It wasn't no grand conclusions or anything, except that there was no real difference at all between people because of fallen human nature. But Hegseth framed the debate around what he calls woke politics and vowed to put an end to what he called historical revisionism. But this is not revisionism. This is accountability. This is truth. On 1990, on the 100th anniversary of the massacre, Congress passed a resolution expressing deep regret to the descendants of those killed at Wounded Knee. Tribal leaders, historians, and descendants of survivors have spent decades calling for a revocation of the medals, not as an erasure of history, but as a correction of it. The National Congress of American Indians released a following Hegseth's announcement that said such despicable violence should not have been lauded in the first place. Honoring those involved in Wounded Knee with the United States' highest military award is incompatible with the values of the Medal of Honor is meant to respect. NCAI Executive Director Larry Wright said, "Celebrating war crimes is not patriotic. The decision undermines truth-telling, reconciliation, and the healing that Indian country the United States still needs." And by the way, there are a lot of Native Medal of Honor recipients, and the Native population joins the military by far outweighs any other minority population because of their warrior heritage. But everybody talks about the Holocaust. Well, think about the Holocaust and then think about that awards were given and never rescinded for that. Earlier this month, Congress passed the Wounded Knee Massacre Memorial and Sacred Site Act that signed into law that the that of the Wounded Knee Massacre site. The law places the land in a restricted fee status, meaning it cannot be sold, taxed, gifted, or leased without approval from Congress. The Oglala Sioux and Cheyenne River Sioux tribes, which jointly signed for 3 years ago. Ironically, U.S. Senator Mike Rounds, Republican South Dakota, who sponsored the Senate version, has never supported the Remove the Stain Act, legislation that calls for revoking the medals given to the 7th Cavalry. Even though the Remove the Stain Act has been introduced to the Senate numerous times, it never made it to the Senate floor. As we have learned many times in recent years, from boarding school acknowledgments to MMIP awareness campaigns, remembering a tragedy is not the same as reckoning with it. And then they conclude with, "We are all related." as well. So there are these sacred cows of God, police, military, law enforcement, but they should be held accountable as well. And I can say that as a former military and police as well. But there's certainly a great stain upon the Medal of Honor as well. So we are all labeled conspiracy theorists. Yes, I see that. So I also wanted to, I got a comment from one of my patrons, Tracy, and this was talking about how Yeshua was likely born in Sukkot in September, October, and going through when Johann, Elizabeth's husband, would have been in the temple, and how you can trace that. And Tracy wrote, "Hi, Jeffrey, thank you for sharing this. It always fascinates me how our Heavenly Father put so much detailed planning into the birth of his son. Then he left us so many clues, like those in the article you sent. I mentioned the Tower of the Flock. In my Christmas card, it still amazes me that modern pastors show so little interest in archaeology, like that of Alfred Enderschein regarding the Migdal Elder." And that's very true. Modern pastors just are so dumbed down. It is astounding. Here's a breakdown from Gemini Ultra AI about Alfred Edersheim, the 19th century Messianic Jewish scholar who was one of the most prominent voices to connect the Tower of the Flock to the Nativity in his seminal work, The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah. He argued that the traditional Western view of a lonely stable was historically and archaeologically incomplete. Here's a breakdown of the evidence. The Mishnaic regulations. Aldersheim's primary evidence came from the Mishnah, the written record of Jewish oral tradition. According to Mishnah Shekalim, volume 6:4, any cattle found in the area between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, specifically near Migdal Elder, were presumed to be destined for temple sacrifice. So this establishes that the shepherds in that specific region were not ordinary nomads. They were employees of the temple hierarchy, tasked with guarding and birthing the sacrificial lambs, which makes total sense because this was a year-round activity. And if you really look at the temple when it was running, there was blood all the time. There were constant sacrifices. There were gutters for the blood. So where would all the animals come from? Well, they would have made the areas around, the pastures around there, those fields dedicated to that. So this makes total sense. The architectural Migdal, architecturally, Migdal Tower was a permanent stone structure, and excavations in the Judean area show that. The two-tier design, the upper level served as a lookout for watchmen. The lower level was a large vaulted room used as a maternity ward for ewes. So the upper level serves as a lookout for the watchmen. And by the way, the Magdala, the Magdalene means watchtower as well. The mangers, unlike wooden troughs, these mangers were often stone basins hollowed out of the limestone walls or floor, designed for easy cleaning, which makes sense, a necessity for maintaining the ritual purity of the sacrificial lambs. And the swaddling technique noted that these specialized shepherds used swaddling cloths to wrap newborn lambs. This was done to prevent thrashing and potentially breaking a bone of the newborn lambs, because a lamb with a broken bone or blemish was disqualified from being a temple sacrifice. When the angels gave the shepherds the sign of a babe wrapped in swaddling cloths lying in a manger, Edersheim argues that they were pointing to a scene the shepherds witnessed daily in the birthing room of the Migdal Eder, but this time it was the Lamb of God in the stone trough. Archaeologists such as Cunningham Gelke and later researchers have pointed out that the Migdal Elder was located on the northern outskirts of Bethlehem on the road to Jerusalem. The inn, the Kataluma, in this area, if a home's upper guest room, Kataluma, was full, guests would stay in the lower level where the family's animals were kept for safety. The tower's proximity, because the census had overcrowded the village, the nearby Migdal Elder, a clean ritual-grade facility for birthing, provided a logical and prophetic alternative for Joseph and Mary. Elder Scheim emphasized that the Jews of the first century expected the Messiah to be revealed first at Migdal Elder. The Targum, which is an Aramaic translation commentary of the Hebrew Bible on Micah 4:8, explicitly states, "And now, O tower of the flock, unto thee the kingdom shall come by being born in the birthing room of the sacrificial lambs." There it is. That's it exactly. Christ was identified at his first breath as the ultimate sacrifice, fulfilling both the physical archaeology of the site and the theological requirements of the law. Jeffrey, I enjoyed the archaeology classes my 4 years at Dallas Seminary, 76 to 80, but I'm still not qualified to judge the historicity of these claims. I just like the idea of our King Jesus being born in Migdal Elder. And I pray for a blessed new year to you and your family. Be praying for you every day in 2026, Tracy. I thought, very cool, Tracy. And thank you so much for your prayers and for that really wonderful explanation. And if you want to know who's, what kind of patrons I have, there they are, patreon.com/Jeffrey Prather. Not only are you talking to me, but they're talking to each other and, building up friendships and relations there as well. So I thought that was really cool. John Guess, how was your Christmas with the wife and daughters, Jeff, in your new house? Oh, no, we are not in our new house yet. It is coming along really well. Thank you for asking, but we are still in our little guest house. But we had a great Christmas. It was very quiet. It was just us. I thought we were going to save money on presents because we're spending so much on the house, but everybody ended up getting each other a lot more presents than, had thought. I think that's because it was such a traumatic year for us. I haven't got my Rolex Submariner back there, so my wife got me my great Omega Seamaster there, which I really love. Because who knows when I'm ever going to get my Submariner back. It's going on a year now. But we had a great Christmas. Hope you all did too, and it's been a real nice, quiet time. Of course, we got a real tree. Very nice, but thanks for asking. I hope you all had a great Christmas as well. So those are all the things I wanted to cover today. I don't see any more comments on X today, but I think those are the important issues. That calling Candace crazy delegitimizes by diagnosis. And Biden's thousands versus Trump's 0 prosecutions shows that there's a deep state deal in place by Trump. It wasn't too big to rig. Israel first resorts to slurs in psychiatry. That's where if you're saying you're anti-Semitic or you're a Nazi or something, you don't have to debate anymore about why we're putting another country first or why you have dual citizenship. You're just labeling people. And of course, again, I talked about how this is what DEA tried to do to me, and it didn't work at all because I passed their test because of my spirituality, which is kind of funny. And Trump calls Netanyahu a war hero and asks for a pardon for him. And then lastly, the Wounded Knee, the 20 Medal of Honor from the Wounded Knee massacre will not be rescinded. And that is really a tragedy and dishonors all the real Medal of Honor recipients as well. So again, I think this is the last show of the year. I will be doing a show on Thursday, on January 1st, on New Year's. I want to thank all of you for your support and your patience and for sticking with me. I also got a note recently that said, I remember when you said many come, few stay. I've said a lot of controversial stuff this year, but I think I have backed it up because I'm always going to provide you ruthless truth. That is my goal, and I will continue to do that. And I would appreciate it if you can support the show. If you can do a donation at jeffreyprather.com, please do. Or you can join patreon.com/jeffreyprather, or you can join jeffreyprather.locals.com. Support the show. I would appreciate any of that as well. Thank you. Happy New Year to you and your family as well. Yep, we'll see you Thursday. So slip your secular silo. Scientism isn't sly. It's stupid. Reproductive rape rights are ridiculous. I'm proof of that. But it is the genius of generational curses. Raped becomes mother, who becomes murderer, co-conspirator in sin and death. Meanwhile, the demon sucks the soul of the rapist, raped, and murdered. Silent screams or pain felt is irrelevant. Intentional harm of innocence is evil, always. God's first commandment was, be fruitful and multiply. Abortion is straight satanic script. Sacrifice your babies, then die off. Gen Z is missing a third of themselves. Infanticide is not rare, it is routine, industrialized, institutionalized, and intellectualized. Silicon Valley dreams of immortality while simultaneously sabotaging their own seed. U.S. replacement rate is 2 to 1, but America's at 1 to 6. The math is mass murder. The answer, extinction. The empty classrooms and nurseries aren't a mystery. They're the receipts. My body, my choice is a stupid psyop for feeble-minded females. What about the innocent, most defenseless baby's body? What of their choice? Would they ever choose to be chopped up, sucked out, and flushed down? Would you? Fetus means bringing forth of life. Abort means to end life. Our dead get graves, but our unborn are simply deleted, as if they never were. But their souls still are. For every murdered baby, 1,000 angels weep, but in hell, 1,000,000 demons cheer. There is one way out of the pit, Yeshua. Repent, confess, and ask pardon. Or refuse, and in death, join the 1,000,000.